Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of When Will I Learn? A particularly dark episode. It's because it's night time. Sun up. Much better. First of all, if you can't be arsed watching this whole video, lazy, then here are the quick tip cliff notes. 1. Track your time. Everything always takes longer than you think. Number 2. Decide the theoretical limit for how many jobs you can take. Number 3. Calculate all your expenses. I'll put a link to a little PDF down below. Number 4, get everything in writing, not just a contract, but everything. Number 5, don't even try to compete on price. And number 6, remember, you're gonna have to pay tax. Right, begone you lazy bastards, so I can get back to the people who are actually gonna watch the video. Right, now those losers are gone. Let's get into this. Okay, so you've done a couple of jobs, maybe for friends and family. You've done them cheap, you've done them free, You've done them for a bit of beer money, a bit of coffee money, something like that, in exchange for sexual favours? No? Okay, good. Probably shouldn't do that. You can't write that on your tax form. You've built up a portfolio, you're pretty proud of it, you're going to start putting out feelers for some proper paid work. But how much money are you going to ask for? So this is somewhat of a tough and touchy subject for a lot of people. How much do you charge for your services? How much are you worth? So there's no right answer, but there are a couple of schools of thought on pricing yourself. Number 1 is charge what you feel like you're worth. Now this isn't so bad. This is a good way to go when you're first starting out. You don't have many overheads. You're probably doing stuff kind of below the radar. Don't tell anyone. I won't. And this will get you through your first, couple of jobs, maybe your first 6 months. The problem is you're going to make a lot of mistakes with this method. So in this method, you're just charging for how long it takes you to do the shoot, and maybe if you're wise, you've decided to charge for the edit as well, because a lot of people forget that bit. There's loads more stuff that you won't be charging for. You won't have thought about the fact that you need to recoup the camera costs. You won't have thought about insurance. You might not have thought about the fact that you're going to have to pay tax and things like that. This is okay though. You've not got the overheads yet. The camera that you've got is the one that you were using when you were doing this as a hobby, so you've not got that sunk cost of a camera. You don't have to think about paying that back. But at some point you're probably going to have to buy another one or a new one or upgrade or something. And your time's going to mount up. The time you spend on a shoot is not just the actual time that you have the camera in your hand. It's the editing time, it's the time delivering stuff, it's the time making the contacts, sending out the original emails, dealing with the client beforehand, dealing with the aftercare, stuff like that. Charging what you feel like you're worth isn't gonna cut it for long. Once you get that insurance, once you get that website, you get the accountant, you realise that you have to pay tax, all that stuff needs to be factored in. Number 2, this way is not really going to work if you're kind of cold calling and approaching people just out of the blue. But if you've got people coming to you asking for your services, this might be the way to think about things. This might be the way to go. And what this method is basically just asking what their budget is. Now, regardless of whether you base your whole pricing on this is a good thing to ask, because it'll kind of lead the conversation. It'll lead the direction of what you're able to offer to them. If you don't know what their budget is, you might be thinking, right, I'll do like a 4-day shoot and we'll get like hair and makeup in and we'll get all this stuff, and actually they've only got 200 quid, then yeah, maybe it's just a couple of hours for them. Knowing the budget beforehand will just kind of help to speed up the negotiation process. You don't want to be sat there writing out this massive brief, this massive project overview, sending it off to them and quoting them way out of their budget. The problem with basing it on their budget is you're going to come up with wildly different amounts of money depending on the client, because it's a really reactionary way to price. It's also something you can't rely on because they might have no clue. They might not have set money aside for this. They might just be thinking, whatever the quote comes in at, we'll find a way to pay that. So budget is something you should be asking, but it's also not a reason just to blindly overcharge someone. So a little side story on a budget-based strategy and not getting too greedy. Recently had an inquiry about a couple of videos. They really helpfully sent over exactly what they needed, what they wanted from it. They had reference material, so they had other videos that they found that looked like what they wanted to create. So we had a phone call, and on that phone call I asked what their budget was. The person responded with 2 to 4 and then a pause, and I thought they're going to say 100, and I'm going to have to tell them that unless we strip this back to me basically filming this on my phone, we're probably not going to get everything done for that much money. There's just no way. Luckily, as the person carried on, they said 1,000, and I thought, great. What I didn't think was, right, I can charge $4,000 for this. What I did was I looked at how much it costs me to make this video, to produce this video, and I gave them a quote based on that. I wasn't reactionary, I wasn't money grabbing. I don't think that's the way you should work. Just because you find out that they've got a bigger budget doesn't mean you should stretch to that. Now, that's not to say that I didn't give them the option. I gave them the option of some extras on top of that. You know, if they do have that budget, we can get some amazing like drone stuff, and we can get someone in to help on like scripting, and we can get someone in to help with, you know, other stuff basically. And that's a reaction you should be having to a budget. Right, okay, I charge this much. I know that I can get it done for this much. Here are some extras. And that way you feel better about it. You know that you're doing it within your means. You know that you're not ripping them off. It's just a better way to go about it. So the last one leads me nicely into number 3. Having a pricing model, having some sort of package system for your pricing. So this can mean many, many different things. The example that is most familiar to me is from my days as a wedding photographer. Back then, I used to have like a base package that you go to my website, you find that package, you know that you're paying £600 for my services. That's how much I charged for a full wedding with an album back nearly 10 years ago now, so I don't feel too bad about it. But then I had extra add-ons to that, where if you had a bit more budget, you could get better coverage, so more time with a second person there, you get a nicer album, things like that, you get more prints, that kind of stuff. And no one ever went for that one, because if you're a low ball budget photographer, you're going to get low ball clients. So you'll see a lot of wedding photographers, they'll have like a package system, which is like silver, gold, platinum, or diamond, and like, you know, there's 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000, and you'll get different stuff for each of those. This is a great way to go if you want your prices to be out there, but you don't want to limit yourself to just being at one price. So yeah, you could be a wedding photographer and have no price on your website. Kind of don't recommend that. What is best is to have these packages, this kind of pricing structure. This can work for things like portrait shoots. So you can like have a pricing structure that is like 1 hour with 1 print, 2 hours with 3 prints, 3 hours with 10 prints, something like that, where you kind of offer more value as the price increases. When you're building this model, you still need to figure out how much your time is worth and stuff like that. This is great for when you're starting out though, because you can set these prices and you can kind of use that as like A/B testing. So you can see if everyone's just going for the lowest price, is that because that's your target audience and maybe you should tailor everything to that price and you should maybe work on efficiency instead of price? Or if everyone's kind of going to the higher price, drop that lower price completely, get rid of it and move up to a different pricing system where you've got an even higher price. You've got a £100 and a £150 portrait shoot deal. Everyone's going for the £150 because they like see that value. Drop the £100 one, introduce the £250 one, and see where that gets you. This is a good way to figure out the market because you can A/B test, and at that point you've got an educated sense of what the market can handle for you. These packages and pricing structures are a great way if you're going to be cold calling or approaching people out of the blue, because you can say, hey, here I am, here's my portfolio, here's my price, do you want to work with me? Great for working with restaurants, working as a wedding photographer, working as a portrait photographer, things like that, where you're kind of always going to be doing the same sort of thing. You kind of work out the cost beforehand and you know that each process is going to be the same. For me, I find, especially now with video, I need to give a bespoke price. It's really difficult to have any sort of fixed price when the video could be a 2-minute recruitment video, or it could be a 5-minute informative Kickstarter video. You can't do it. That's where bespoke pricing comes in. That's where building up a quote comes in. So number 4, bespoke pricing. This is the way that I work now because jobs are just a lot more complicated. So for this method, you build up a price for the client based on what they need. This is going to mean that in those initial communications, be that email or phone calls or in person, you're going to have to find a way to let them know this. You need to let them know with confidence as well. So that's the great thing about the previous pricing model, where you've got different packages or you've got a fixed price with add-ons. What you can do there is really quickly say, right, this is going to cost this much. With the bespoke model, where you're building a price specifically for them, you're not going to be able to tell them in that first call what it's going to be. To get around that, what you need to do is you need to tell them that you're going to send them a breakdown of the costs, a quote. This is just a good way to diffuse that situation where you start to fumble for your words on the phone. Oh, I don't know, I'll let you know. This is a bespoke job. I'm going to have to build a quote specifically for you. I'll get it back to you as soon as. You kind of need to have a grasp of what sort of price bracket you're in, what sort of market you are in. So that's kind of based on location and the amount of people who need your services. It can be tough. The other thing you're going to have to think about is how many jobs that you can physically fit in and stay sane, be that in a day, a week, a month, or even a year. And you need to do your bookkeeping. You need to know not only how much the cost of running the business is, but how much you need to pay yourself to survive. So you need to really break down the expenses of your life. I'm going to include a little PDF that you can kind of write out and just see what your costs all come to. So you need to think about everything from, rent or mortgage through to like your car, the home insurance, how much it costs to look after your cat, everything, because that's all going to have to come out of this photography money or this freelance money at the end of the day. And in my last video, I talked about having a buffer, so you also need to factor in savings. There's a lot to it. That's why I'll leave it as a PDF and not go into it much more. Another thing that I've not really heard people talk about before is making sure that you know what the job looks like in the future. It's all well and good being like, I can fit in 30 shoots a month. I can work every weekend. I can get an average of 360 shoots a year. I'll try and fit that in. Then you work out your expenses and you divide that up and you're like, right, okay, I only need to charge such an amount. But do you want that to be your job? Do you want your job to be working almost every day? No weekends, no time for the family. You probably got into this because you like it and you like it more than you like your job. But if you make this into a really shitty job, you're going to hate this as well. So be realistic about what you want the commitment to be. Remember that you're not your ideal client. And I've had mixed reactions to this piece of advice, but I don't think you should be able to afford yourself. It sounds really cynical, but for a service like photography, for a service like design, video, where you've ploughed so much of your life into learning this, you shouldn't be able to afford yourself. You are too good for yourself. You are not your ideal client. Your ideal client has more money than you do. Because think about it, that cost that you're putting out has to cover your rent and your bills and everything. But to your client, this is just how much you're charging for a job. So it might sound cynical, but keep it in mind, you're not your ideal client. Okay, kind of touching back on step 1, knowing what you deserve. Like I just said, you've ploughed a lot of your life into becoming the photographer you are or the designer you are, whatever you do. You've spent a lot of time leading up to that. There's a lot of creativity that goes into jobs like this. There's a lot of mental energy. You need to know what you deserve for that. And that's where this creativity fee comes in. This is what you bring to the table. Because you don't want to charge minimum wage for this. You don't want to be charging the bare minimum. Like the unskilled labour cost is not what you should be charging. You should be working way beyond that, really. In an ideal world, we would all get compensated for the quality we create. But it doesn't always work like that. Most people will undercharge on the creativity fee, which is basically just your income from it. your wage. Please, for the sake of sanity, do not charge your services at minimum wage. There's a little thing called profit that I feel like gets a bit misinterpreted. It gets missed. The point of it gets missed. What profit is it's the money left over. It's the top level money that goes back into the business once the project is done. Profit is the money that's after your wage, after you've paid everyone else, after insurance has been paid, after tax has been paid, after everything's been paid. Profit is the thing that gets reinvested into the business. It gets turned into savings. It gets put away for emergencies. If you're only taking out the profit, you're not charging enough. So for me, this pricing strategy looks a little bit like this. I have a day rate for me, and that is the most basic cost anyone will be paying me. If I have to turn up somewhere and transport's included, lunch is included, equipment's included, I just have to turn up, give my time to it. This is when people pay my day rate. That's a fixed cost that I don't budge on. And I'll add that to my quote for a project. And the smallest chunk that I'll break this into is a half day. And what that means is I never am going to be breaking my time up where I have to see like 4 clients in one day. And that's the only way I can see myself being happy with this job in the future. So having this rate is great. It means that if someone comes to me and just needs me as a second camera, I can go, this is the amount I charge for that. This is my day rate. You only need me for a couple of hours. Here's my half day rate. And that's that. There we go. Nice and simple. This is the core that this gets built on then. So if I'm pricing a job, that's like the first thing I add on. Unless they don't need me there, but then why are they coming to me? No, that's not true. Some of the drone work I've done, they don't need me there, so I don't add that on. Makes sense? Yeah. That gets built on. You add on things like travel, any location costs, any gear rental. Then you're going to start thinking about who else you need for that project. Do you need a PA? Do you need a second camera? Do you need an audio assistant? Something like that. That all gets added on. And the way to do that is find out what they cost, factor in a little bit of a fee for yourself on that, because there is time involved in finding someone to do the lighting for you. There's extra issues involved, maybe you end up having to feed them on the day, things like that. There's costs involved. So add on a little bit on top of people's fees. And beyond that, I want to make sure the business makes a profit and we have some money in case of emergencies, in case of things breaking or not being paid or things like that. That is the profit. So you need to add on a little bit on top for that. It's also helpful to have a little bit of a buffer inbuilt there, and that can kind of be the profit. So if things run long, if something goes wrong on the shoot, you need to add an extra day onto it. That will either eat into a buffer or eat into the profit. Now, sometimes you can do a buffer as a thing that can be signed off that isn't actually built directly into the original cost, but if everyone agrees, it can be signed off and added on. Maybe it's a 2-day shoot and there's a chance that it's going to go into 3. What you can do there is you charge for the 2-day shoot, have an extra added on that just needs to be signed off, that's pre-approved for the 3rd day. That's really handy because you don't want to be trying to negotiate a 3rd day once everything's been settled. There are other things to mention, like payment plans. So for makers, Etsy sellers, people like that, I have 12-month payment plans where you get a couple of shoots, you get this package, but you only pay a certain amount a month. That works great for them. It means that I know that I've got a certain amount coming in. Happy days for everyone. Things like that are worth thinking about. Make sure you have contracts in place for those. So this video has been a lot of information, and the point that I'm trying to get across is it is difficult to price your work. It's really difficult to tell someone else how to price their work because there's a lot of variables. There's so much to think about when it comes to how much money should come in from a job. It's annoying, but there is no right answer. There's no definite fixed number that I can give you that's like, yes, that's right. I'd say don't charge less than a couple of £100 a day when you're starting out, but then that's not going to work for people either. I'd say if you are in a position where you're hiring in other people, don't charge less than a couple of grand for a project. But that sounds like mega, and if someone had told me that a couple of years ago, I'd be like, oh, but I can never ask for that much money. But the more you do, the more you work with other people, the more you price these jobs, you gain an understanding. Pricing yourself is actually kind of like a creative pursuit in itself. There are no real fixed rules. It's a case of trial and error. It's a case of practice. It's learning by doing. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to have jobs early on and probably late on where you lose money or things go wrong and it just ends up costing you. It's a sad thing to say, but it probably will happen. If you can't deal with that, freelancing life probably isn't for you. Starting your own business probably isn't for you. You will make mistakes. There are some things that you really should keep in mind though. Number one, if you're too busy, you're too cheap. Remember, you're not your ideal client. Number three, you are not right for everyone. Number four, do not, I repeat, do not stress about what other people are charging. Number five, consistent pricing is key, but don't let it get in the way of progress. Number six, get everything in writing. Make sure everything is in writing. And please, 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 for the love of everything that is good in the world, do not charge for something you are rubbish at. You'll bring the rest of us down. You'll drag us down with you. That's my cue to leave. See you next time.